Good morning and welcome to SimWorld Today, September 22nd. We are here on a Monday morning talking everything and the highlights from football action over the weekend in the SWFL. A lot of big wins. The teams are starting to make sense. The teams are starting to establish who's good, who's not, and who's somewhere in between. And there were some wins on Sunday that I think are trying to kind of solidify that. But let's actually start with the team that lost, and that is the Los Angeles Rams, who lose on just a dramatic conclusion there with a chance to win it against Philadelphia. Even with this loss, I still really like the Rams. You might remember last year, I was very high on the Rams. Last week, we talked about this. I'm very high on the Rams. That didn't change for me on Sunday. Yes, you have this collapse against the defending champions on the road, but you still have a chance to win it at the end. And one blocked kick that turns into points on the other direction, I don't think changes the fact that you were sitting there with an opportunity that we shouldn't dismiss a team because, well, you didn't get this one play. And so much of the SWFL does come down to one play. Chargers Broncos, for example, down to one play. We had the San Francisco 49ers needing a field goal over Arizona, one play. I don't think that we should look at that and say, well, you didn't make this one play, so therefore you are just significantly worse than the team you're against. I think despite the fact that San Francisco won, I think the Rams are in a really good spot in that division. I think it's going to be a really good division as it was a year ago. Seattle had a huge win over New Orleans, and of course now the Cardinals and the Rams are both 2-1. But if you're looking at Los Angeles, I think this is a team that's got the same weapons, the same situation, and they should have walked out of Philadelphia with a huge win, and they didn't. I think the one question mark for the Rams is Matthew Stafford. Right, he has the knee injury scare. He's dealt with back injuries. This team is gonna, rise or fall based off of him. And you could say that about pretty much any of these top teams. But with the Rams, it just feels bigger. It feels more impactful with the health status of Matthew Stafford. Let's go to the Colts, who moved to 3-0. They're gonna get a whole lot of love. But I would say let's take a look at where they come from. They beat Miami, who's winless. They beat Denver, who's now 1-2 with their only win over Tennessee, and they beat Tennessee, who's winless. It's hardly a murderer's row of who they've had to go against. 3 of their next 4 are very challenging. Rams, Raiders, Cardinals, Chargers. It's going to get harder, and the Indiana Jones start to the season for Daniel Jones has been a lot of fun to watch. But I'm very hesitant to look at this team and say, yeah, they're the number 1 team in the AFC South, and they're a legitimate contender in the AFC. I'm not saying that they can't be a really good team in the AFC. I certainly think they can be, and mathematics give them a really good start to the season at 3-3. But after this 4-game stretch, after that game against the Chargers, I don't think it's impossible to be sitting here saying seeing this team at 4-4. They're just, it's difficult to take a lot of stake in Miami, Denver, and Tennessee. Now, if you throw in one good team in that mix, a Packers or I don't know, a Jaguars who now are 2-1, I guess, so you could throw them in. But any team that's above 500, that their only win isn't against another winless team, you feel pretty good about the Colts. I'm not saying that we should rain on the parade, but I'd like to see them get tested a little bit more before we just hand over the keys to them in the AFC South. The Cowboys. I don't love talking about the Cowboys, but after that disaster, you kind of have to. Their defense was anemic. They couldn't get any stops against a Chicago offense that has been up and down all season. It feels like a get-right game for Caleb Williams and company, but really, I don't know, Dallas, maybe you kind of need that singular pass rusher who can attack the edge, and it doesn't help when the guy that you brought in walked off with an injury in this one. This team is very flawed, and now you've got CeeDee Lamb down with an ankle injury, which is only going to hurt an offense that actually looked really good through the first 2 games. An offense that looked really potent, a good running game in Javonte Williams, a very good passing attack between CeeDee Lamb and Turpin and George Pickens, and a good tight end core. And now you're sitting there at 1-2 in a division that feels like it's the Eagles to run away with, and they're well positioned to do so. Now, the upcoming schedule isn't bad. You get the Packers, Jets, Panthers, Commanders, and Broncos over the next 5 games. You kind of like those. You feel like they should be walking out with 3 wins there at least with Jets, Panthers, Broncos. But now you're getting a Green Bay team who's coming in, who's got Micah Parsons returning to Dallas on Sunday Night Football from the organization that traded him, and they're coming off a disappointing loss of their own to the Cleveland Browns. It's not really a great recipe for the Cowboys to right the ship, which means I think we very well could be looking at this team at 1-3 at the end of next week and staring down a very, very difficult hurdle to get back into the NFC playoff picture and probably watching the NFC East opportunity run away from them with Philly and the Commanders standing in front of them. Let's go to that Packers game in the Cleveland Browns. There's going to be some conversation. Oh, the Packers lose to the Browns. The Browns are 1-2. The Browns aren't good. The Browns kind of have been sneaky, not too bad. They should have won week 1 if their kicker decided to make anything that they could have against a healthy Bengals team, who, by the way, on Sunday looked exactly as we would have expected without Joe Burrow, although a lot of that could be credited to Isaiah Rodgers and his awesome game in the Minnesota secondary. They were close for 3 quarters against a top 2 team in Baltimore in week 2 before the wheels kind of fell off in the 4th, and then they showed up against the Packers. Now, their defense is very, very good. That shouldn't be a surprise considering the assets that they have on the defensive side of the ball. And oh, hey, Quinshon Judkins, turns out, guy's pretty valuable. Who would have thought that? After all this drama about was he going to sign a contract, what was going to happen with that, he had an awesome game for an offense that really doesn't move the ball well. And this is a team that's going to have to win grinded out games. Their defense is well acquainted for it. Their defense is well positioned for it. And their running game showed on Sunday that they could be a very dangerous team if they have all the pieces in place. Let's go to my last team and my last takeaway, and that's the Chargers. You have to be feeling great. Not only are the Chargers 3-0, but they're 3-0 coming against all divisional opponents. That is a difficult start to the season to face all teams in division, and they have answered it with glowing marks. Their offense continues to look great, and really both LA offenses just kind of feel like carbon copies of one another with 3 to 4 great options in the passing game, and Herbert with this continued great season from Quentin Johnson with this great season from McConkey and Keenan Allen, the ageless wonder, plus a really nice running game out of Hampton. This offense is awesome, and their defense did it without Khalil Mack, which will only bolster them once they get healthy in 3 games. But again, from last week, the math just favors the Chargers. You have these advantages over every single team, and even if you were to lose the next 3, you've already built a pretty substantial cushion over everyone that sits below them. Their schedule gets pretty comfortable. Giants, Commanders, Daniels should probably be back by that in 2 weeks. Dolphins, Colts, Titans, Steelers. 3 games maybe in that stretch are toss-ups with the Commanders, the Colts, and the Steelers. So maybe even 2 of them, depending on how we really see and feel about the Colts in 3 weeks. They could not only be in really good position to run away with the division, but this team could be battling with Baltimore and with Buffalo for the number 1 spot in the AFC, and Justin Herbert is doing a fantastic job of leading this organization. That's our takeaways from week 3 in the SWFL. We're back tomorrow morning right here on SimWorld TV. The only place you can see the game, be the game. Mm-hmm.